So the next speaker is Robert Massey from the Royal Astronomical Society, and I think he should be online. Ah, okay.
I
see
am
your
indeed.
face, yes.
Give me a second. Let's just check this is working. I'll just go through. There we go. That's working. Okay. Thank you, Juliana. Thank you, everybody, for just start my timer. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me. They say you should never start a talk with an apology, but the only one I'm going to give is that due to ill health, I can't be there with you. Actually, I'm in good shape now, ironically, but I had a medical emergency over the weekend. So it's a pleasure to be with you from 20 degrees further north and 20 degrees cooler. What I'm going to do is rattle through the stuff I would have said yesterday about the kind of work that's going on in the UK that I think has relevance on a bigger scale, because obviously no country does this in isolation. All the decisions we make have that wider ramification. So let's see if that advances. Brilliant stuff. I give credit to Lisa again, as others have done, for flagging up Project Westford. I talk about this most of the time in the talks, just because we put out a specific statement. You can read that at some point. I think I just want to make the point the UK is a serious astronomy player, so we have a big interest in this. We spend some of our, what in the US would be called tax dollars, or in the UK, taxpayers' money on astronomy. And to some extent, that's in contention, or in tension rather, with the money that goes into some aspects of areas like satellite constellations. Remember of the European Southern Observatory, ESO, SKO, and many other collaborations, as UK people in the room will know very well. So how did we respond to this? Well, again, very briefly, in 2019, I think we reacted with the same kind of shock as everybody else. Perhaps we shouldn't have done, perhaps we should have been listening and reading more, or reading the right places, but I guess at the time it wasn't something we did. So we created working groups like other organizations did. This is the photo of the only meeting that took place of them in person, because after that, the COVID pandemic hit. And since then, all the conversations have been online, and that's worked extremely well, I have to say. But we bring together the players you'd expect, industry and policy makers in the civil service and the public service, astronomers and so forth. So I want to talk a bit about the UK landscape. Just, I know most of you will have some familiarity with it, but we have a slightly interesting position that the UK is a country that has a part share in a satellite constellation, namely OneWeb, due to a controversial purchase again in the spring of 2020, when we took a $500 million, I should say, dollar stake in the company to rescue it, or as part of the rescue package. And of course, that's now up and running, providing that access through a network of over 600 satellites. Interestingly, the underpinning reason for the purchase, and you can read around the politics of that if you choose to, is that it won't actually in this stage deliver some of the reasons the purchase around the sovereign GPS GNSS system that was proposed at the time. That won't come on stream just yet, not for some years. But I think one of the advantages of this is it does give us a particular responsibility and leverage, and perhaps that's made it easier to get our government to take it seriously because they understand that. So who regulates the stuff in the UK? Well, it's not a dissimilar structure to that you find in places like the US and others, but equally it's also complicated, as these things tend to be. We have the UK counterpart to the FCC, Ofcom. It's nice HQ there on the side of the Thames. It's the affiliate to the ITU. We have the Civil Aviation Authority, which covers launch and orbital operations, and we have the UK Space Agency, which is basically the delivery vehicle for activities in space. And I mean, I am pleased to say, I think we didn't see this at all 3 or 4 years ago, but now both of those, or all of those, seem to be taking us more seriously. So Ofcom, moving slowly perhaps, but their latest response to a consultation did include a reference to protecting radio astronomy sites, not as well as it's being done in Germany, I have to say, but it seems like a start to me. And the Space Agency is currently running a consultation on sustainability, and includes a reference to dark and quiet skies and how they might be protected, which, again, as the previous speaker said, this is a big step forward. It's a great improvement on where we were. So I'm a bit more upbeat in this than I would have been perhaps a couple of years ago. The UK is also, I think, being reasonably international. It signed or supported the G7 statement. Credit to Sarah Lucatello for getting that done. But the so-called Sherpas in the UK enabled that to happen, that the Science and Technology Ministerial, we back that. And also that I think the statements at UN COPUOS have been largely supportive of dark and quiet skies too. And the representative Tamajan Morgan did liaise with me quite a lot on that beforehand. It was very interesting to talk to them about it all, and they are supportive. So 2 things, though, that I want to mention that are happening, happened fairly recently. One is the so-called Astra Charta, which if you're not in the UK, you probably haven't heard of. It's part of this Sustainable Markets Initiative that was set up by now King Charles III about 3 years ago. and it has this slightly intriguing logo on the left. We didn't have any hand in this, I have to say. The Sustainable Markets Initiative is basically there for private companies to sign up to an agreements on sustainability. And you can see, though, the slogan, I think, would agree with, to care, or the motto is a better word, to care for the infinite wonders of the universe, and then the equivalent in Latin. It's done in the spirit of the Magna Carta, in a sense, from 800 years ago, and therefore it includes, I don't know if the paper scroll actually exists, but it's there on the right. Now, part of that, we didn't sign that, as I mentioned, and I think it's sort of disappeared under the radar in some sense. It's sitting there, but, you know, interesting to see how much influence it has. But part of that, alongside it on the same day, was the Earth Space Sustainability Initiative, or ESSI, and you will hear from Stuart Clark later on this afternoon, and that who's agreed to join the meeting. And this was launched alongside it. We were one of the organizations signing the Memorandum of Principles understanding it, and in a slightly interesting approach, they did come to us and also to the IAUS CPS to ask for our input into those principles. So that's incredibly welcome. It includes, again, explicitly the need to protect the night sky, to foster dark and quiet skies. And I know that they're at the moment, based on a webinar last week, seeking a lot of input from experts. So, and they've explicitly said that they want that to be a global effort. So do look at their website and get in touch with them if you're able to contribute in any way. They are very positive about it. Another then UK initiative currently happening, which I'll reference, is the inquiry into UK astronomy. We have a parliamentary system, and we're obviously also a constitutional monarchy. The advantage of the second of those, I think, for things like the Astra Charta, is that it will remain in place whatever happens in terms of elections. You can argue the merits of monarchy versus republicanism some other time, but inquiry into UK astronomy is very positive. That's being led by the House of Commons Select Committee. Unlike, say, congressional committees, they don't have quite the same kind of powers, but they are there for scrutiny and policy development, so they can make recommendations and examine things in a lot of detail. We don't even know entirely why it happened, except that there seem to be some MPs with interest, and we'll of course be responding to that, talking about the challenges facing the science, and one of which will be satellite constellations. I should also say, by the way, that the ESSI and Astra Charta stuff was connected with the initiative of the current Science Minister, George Freeman, who came in and out of post due to the ongoing political turbulence the UK is experiencing. I could comment on the stuff happening with us this week, but I won't. I'll allow you to look that up online, but I'm very glad I don't have to reference it. So last couple of minutes, according to my timer, which I hope gives me time to take one or two questions. But what's next for us on this? Well, look, this is a flying thing, right? We're trying to continue to raise the profile of this with the policymakers. We want to be very supportive of ESSI and absolutely the CPS. We signed up as a contributing partner and will continue to do that. I give some of my time to that as part of the agreement. We want to continue to make that domestic political case. Now, at the moment, I think we're in quite a good place with that. Obviously, the test will be what actions flow as a result. The UK has not actually launched anything into space yet. Well, not since 1972. But if it does become that kind of partner, or if companies do choose the UK as a large licensing country, then it becomes much more important. So if we do see that kind of regulation in place and foster the highest level, then that will be very welcome. And I think the other part of our piece as well is actually engaging with the media and with the wider public. It was said earlier by Ruskin Huntley, there isn't as much public interest in the app. And I think that's right. And I think it's hard because you have to go to a pretty dark sky to see the fainter satellites, to appreciate the issue. So I think there is work to do there, and we'll continue to prioritize doing that as well. And, you know, also talking to friendly journalists to get headlines like this, which, by the way, I don't mind too much. I think it's completely reasonable if it gets into the mass media in that way. So on that, I will end. I'm very happy to take any questions either this minute, in my remaining, I think, 30 seconds or so, or on Slack. So thank you for listening. Get back to Zoom. Am I in Zoom again?
Thank you.
Stop share. There we go.
And we actually have a couple of minutes, so I don't know if there are questions online. Are there any questions here in the room? Yes, we have one question there.
That's my timer, sorry.
And if you can say your name before asking the question, thank you.
Fred Watson, Australian government. Robert, I have a question from a position of ignorance. Does RAS have an observer status at COPWAS?
No, we don't. We don't. I think we thought about it, and I don't know whether we have the capacity to do it well. I know the EAS obviously does that, and I'm not involved with the copy of stuff, but I'm involved with the EAS working group and sharing that alongside Sarah. I'll park that on the basis I think I would need to know that we would be adding something, or that in our own right we would do that. I should say, by the way, I didn't mention this, the RAS has about 4,000 members, and so we tend to think, I want to think of the work we're doing as drawing on that hinterland and representing people too as best we can. But if there was more interest in doing that, perhaps that's something we should talk about further. I wonder if, are you considering that from an Australian Astronomical Society perspective as well? Or?
Okay, I think we have another question there.
The state of my knowledge is that as a national society, you cannot be an observer at COPUOS. You've got to be international.
That makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I thought when the EAS joined, I thought, well, obviously it represents, what, 30 countries. So that has much more of a credible argument as a large regional organization. Yeah, so that's fine. It gives me well, happy for the EAS to do it, frankly. I trust them on this.
Okay, I think we are running over time, so I will close here the questions. Thanks to all of the speakers in person and online.